Welcome back to our channel, your premier destination for the deepest, most thrilling dives into the world of Genoa City. Today is a fantastic day to unpack some of the most explosive, heart-stopping drama we have ever witnessed. Grab a seat, take a deep breath, and let us journey together into the shadows of Las Vegas where the stakes have never been higher. The air in the Las Vegas hotel room was thick, suffocatingly heavy with a toxic cocktail of sheer desperation, stale air conditioning, and the palpable, vibrating energy of a man pushed to the absolute psychological brink. Nick Newman, his eyes wide, glassy, and darting with manic intensity, stood in the center of the room like a tightly coiled spring ready to snap. His jaw was clenched so tightly it looked ready to shatter into a million pieces. He did not just ask Riza Thompson for a favor. He weaponized the one thing the Newman family always relied on when the world stopped spinning their way. He used cold, hard, obscene wealth, $500,000. 500,000 reasons for Riza to open her mouth, betray the devil himself, and hand over the exact location of Matt Clark. The tension in the room was a living, breathing entity. You could feel the historical weight of the Newman money crashing down on the small, dingy space in Sin City. Nick was not negotiating, he was demanding. And he was doing it with the reckless, terrifying aggression of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Riza Thompson stood frozen, her mind racing through the dangerous calculus of survival. $500,000 was a ghost ticket? It was enough money to vanish, to start over, to escape the sprawling, violent shadow that Matt Clark cast over her life. She looked at Nick, taking in his erratic movements, the sweat beading on his forehead, the terrifying desperation radiating from his every pore. She reluctantly, painfully, decided to trust the Newmans. But Nick, fueled by the synthetic courage of the prescription pills coursing through his veins, was not about to hand over a dime on blind faith. He stepped closer, he invaded her space. He insisted, with a voice that sounded like grinding stones, that they needed the exact, verifiable information before she saw a single cent of that money. He was aggressive, he was paranoid, he was completely unhinged. Finally, the dam broke. Riza exhaled a shaky breath and let the terrifying truth spill from her lips. She admitted the horrifying reality of their situation. Matt Clark had orchestrated this entire charade. He had specifically instructed her to make Nick and Adam Newman believe that she was betraying him. It was a setup. A brilliantly twisted, deeply sadistic psychological trap designed by a man who thrived on the pain of others. Matt wanted Riza to reveal his location. He wanted her to tell the Newman brothers that he was hiding out at an abandoned gas station, a desolate, forgotten place on the outskirts of the desert where he usually stored his illicit merchandise. It was the perfect bait, and the Newmans were supposed to walk right into the jaws of the beast. And this is the moment I almost screamed at the screen. The sheer, diabolical genius of Matt Clark's plan was staggering. He was playing four-dimensional chess with their lives, anticipating their every move, their every desperate instinct, and using it to weave a web of absolute destruction. Chelsea Lawson, who had been watching this exchange with the sharp, calculating eyes of a seasoned survivor, absolutely exploded. Her fury was magnificent and terrifying. She stepped up to Riza, her voice trembling with a potent mixture of rage and protective terror. She lashed out, her words slicing through the tension like a hot knife. She was furious that Riza had stood there, silent and calculating, forcing Adam and Nick to beg, to plead, to offer a king's ransom for information she already possessed. Chelsea knew the games of the underworld. She knew a hustle when she saw one, and she was disgusted that Riza had played with their lives for leverage. But Riza, standing her ground with defensive defiance, fired back. She insisted, her voice cracking with genuine fear, that she did not want to send them into a trap. She knew the gas station was a death sentence. She knew Matt was waiting in the shadows with a loaded weapon and a heart full of historical vengeance. She claimed she was trying to protect them from walking into a slaughterhouse. But there was no time for moral debates. The clock was ticking, and the lives of Sharon and Noah Newman were hanging by the thinnest, most fragile of threads. Adam Newman, his mind working with the cold, calculated precision that defined his darkest days, formulated a counterstrike. He and Nick cornered Riza. They needed to flip the script. They needed to use Matt's own arrogance against him. They forcefully convinced Riza to pick up her phone and call Matt. The plan was incredibly dangerous, but absolutely necessary. She had to make him believe that his brilliant trap had failed. She had to convince the psychopath that the Newman brothers had not taken the bait, that they had panicked, packed their bags, and were currently fleeing Las Vegas, heading back to the safety of Genoa City to protect their loved ones there. The room fell dead silent as Riza dialed the number. The ringing of the phone echoed like a death knell. Riza cleared her throat. She performed her part flawlessly. She fed Matt the lie. She spun a tale of Newman cowardice, painting a picture of Nick and Adam running scared with their tails between their legs. It was a masterful deception, a desperate gamble that relied entirely on Matt's colossal ego blinding him to the truth. Then came the moment that shifted the entire dynamic of the room. Riza, knowing the absolute hellfire the brothers were about to walk into, reached into her belongings. The metallic scrape of metal against fabric sent a chill down my spine. She pulled out a handgun. The weapon was heavy, dark, and pregnant with the promise of violence. She held it out to Adam. She offered him the ultimate tool for self-defense, a grim acknowledgement that words and money were no longer going to solve this crisis. Blood was going to be spilled. Chelsea reacted with visceral, absolute horror. She threw herself between Adam and the weapon. She protested wildly, her voice echoing off the cheap hotel walls. She knew what that gun represented. It was not just a piece of metal, it was a one-way ticket back to the darkness. It was an invitation for the spider to return. She screamed that things were getting too dangerous, that they were crossing a line from which there was no return. She begged Adam not to take it. The desperation in her eyes was heartbreaking. She was fighting for the soul of the man she loved, terrified that the violence of Las Vegas would consume him entirely. But Adam, his face an unreadable mask of grim determination, took the weapon. The cold steel felt familiar in his grip. The weight of it was a terrible, tragic necessity. He tucked it away. The point of no return had been crossed. The chaos in the room immediately spilled out into the hallway. Nick, his movements jerky and erratic, snatched the car keys. He was going to drive. He insisted on it with a manic, unyielding stubbornness. Adam stared at his brother in absolute horror. Nick was in no condition to walk in a straight line, let alone pilot a two-VIN machine through the treacherous Nevada desert at breakneck speeds. Nick was high. He was severely, dangerously impaired. The prescription painkillers he had been secretly consuming were taking a massive toll on his system. They rushed to the car. The Nevada heat hit them like a physical blow. Nick threw himself into the driver's seat. He slammed the door. He jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. Adam scrambled into the passenger seat. His heart hammered against his ribs. Nick slammed the gearshift. His foot stomped the gas pedal to the floor. The tires screamed. Rubber burned against the scorching asphalt. The car violently lurched forward. Adam gripped the dashboard. His knuckles turned bone white. The world outside blurred into a streak of neon and desert sand. Nick was driving like a madman. He was swerving. He was overcorrecting. The car drifted dangerously close to the median. Adam yelled. Nick ignored him. The speedometer climbed higher and higher. Faster, faster. The engine whined in protest. Adam looked at his brother. He saw the terrifying truth. Nick's eyes were completely dilated. His breathing was shallow and rapid. Sweat poured down his face in rivers. Adam realized, with a sinking, terrifying dread in the pit of his stomach, that Nick's medication was either kicking in with catastrophic force, or his body was violently craving another dose. He was witnessing a man actively withdrawing or actively overdosing while navigating a lethal weapon down a highway. Adam tried to intervene. He tried to reach for the steering wheel. He tried to reason with the manic energy consuming his brother. He told Nick he was going to kill them both before they ever reached Matt, but Nick violently swerved, throwing Adam against the door. Nick cut the conversation off with a guttural, terrifying roar. He screamed that they had to race. He screamed that they had to save Noah. He screamed that they had to save Sharon. His love for his family had mutated into a dangerous, blinding obsession. He was running entirely on adrenaline, trauma, and synthetic chemicals. The claustrophobia inside that speeding car was unbearable. Every second felt like an eternity. Every slight turn of the wheel felt like a brush with death. The desert landscape whipped by in a terrifying blur of brown and gray. Adam sat trapped, clutching the door handle, a loaded gun in his pocket, entirely at the mercy of a drug-fueled driver hurtling toward a confrontation with a psychopath. I was literally holding my breath. The sheer, unadulterated suspense of this car ride was a masterclass in television tension. Meanwhile, back in the stifling confines of the Las Vegas hotel room, the atmosphere was a completely different kind of explosive. Chelsea Lawson and Riza Thompson were left alone. Two women who understood the dark, transactional nature of the world better than anyone else. Chelsea did not waste a single second. She turned her fierce, burning gaze onto Riza. She was not just angry, she was territorial. She began to tell Riza exactly who she was. She laid out her history. She recounted her own stories of survival, of manipulation, of clawing her way out of the gutter. She wanted Riza to understand that she was not some naive, delicate flower from the Midwest. She was a predator who had learned to play nice. Chelsea stepped right into Riza's personal space. The air crackled with feminine hostility. She made it absolutely, unequivocally clear that Adam Newman was off limits. She stated, with a voice as cold and hard as a diamond, that Adam no longer had any interest whatsoever in the dark, twisted life they used to share. He was not the spider anymore. He was not the man who thrived in the shadows of Sin City. Chelsea declared, with a fierce, unwavering absolute certainty, that she was Adam's present. She was his future. She was his anchor to the light. She warned Riza to stay in her lane, to take her dirty Newman money and disappear, because if she ever tried to drag Adam back into the abyss, Chelsea would destroy her. It was a magnificent, powerful declaration of love and ownership. Chelsea was fighting a spiritual war for Adam's redemption, and Riza was just another casualty on the battlefield. Miles away, far from the neon lights and the hotel room drama, the true nightmare was unfolding under the unforgiving desert sun. The abandoned gas station stood like a rotting skeleton against the barren landscape. The paint was peeling, the windows were shattered. The smell of ancient, dried gasoline and hot dust hung heavy in the stagnant air. It was a place forgotten by time, a perfect, isolated stage for a tragedy. Outside the dilapidated building, inside a sweltering, parked car, Matt Clark was holding court. He sat in the driver's seat, a cruel, triumphant smirk plastered across his face. In his hand, resting casually, with lethal intent, was a firearm. The dark barrel of the gun was pointed directly at the terrified figures in the back seat, Sharon Newman and her son, Noah. The psychological terror radiating from Matt was suffocating. He was not just holding them hostage. He was savoring their fear. He was drinking it in like fine wine. He slowly, methodically ordered them out of the vehicle. The click of the gun's hammer being pulled back echoed like a thunderclap in the quiet den in the Sahara Desert. He marched them at gunpoint toward the dark, gaping maw of the abandoned building. Once inside the shadowy, debris-filled structure, Matt truly began to revel in his perceived victory. He stood before them, a monstrous figure from their darkest past, gloating with a sickening, arrogant pride. He believed he held all the cards. He believed he had finally, definitively outsmarted the great and powerful Newman family. He paced back and forth, his boots crunching on the broken glass, boasting about his superior intellect, his flawless plan, his absolute dominance over their lives. Sharon Newman was living her worst historical nightmare. The trauma of her past with Matt Clark, the abuse, the terror, the years of psychological scars, all came rushing back with paralyzing force. But beneath the terror, the fierce, biological imperative of a mother's love ignited. She looked at Matt, her eyes brimming with tears, her voice trembling, but laced with an undeniable strength. She begged him, she pleaded with him, she offered herself up as a sacrifice. She told him to take his revenge on her, to do whatever twisted, sick things he wanted to do to her, but to let Noah go. She desperately tried to convince him to leave her son out of this ancient, bloody feud. She humbled herself before her abuser, stripping away her pride in a desperate, agonizing attempt to buy her child's life. It was a scene of such profound, gut-wrenching emotional agony that it was difficult to watch. But Noah Newman was not a child to be protected. He was a Newman man, and the blood of Victor Newman ran hot in his veins. He refused to cower. He refused to let his mother beg for his life. Noah stepped forward, placing himself between the barrel of the gun and his mother. He stared directly into the cold, dead eyes of Matt Clark. He decided to fight back using the only weapon he had, the truth. Noah launched a verbal assault. He tried to dismantle Matt's towering ego. He threw Matt's own sordid, pathetic history right in his face. He brought up Sienna Bacall. He loudly, aggressively asserted that Matt's illicit, unforgivable affair with Sienna was the root of all this misery. He stated that the affair was an unforgivable sin, a pathetic betrayal that proved Matt was nothing but a weak, hypocritical coward. Noah urged him, with a fierce, defiant courage, to let go of his obsessive, psychotic vendetta against Sharon. He told Matt to look in the mirror and realize that he was the architect of his own pathetic destruction. The tension in the dusty room spiked to a dangerous, lethal level. Matt's smug smile vanished, replaced by a dark, murderous scowl. His ego had been bruised. The truth had stung him. He raised the gun, pointing it directly at Noah's chest. His finger tightened on the trigger. He leaned in close, his breath smelling of stale coffee and madness. He insisted, his voice a dangerous, low hiss, that absolutely no one was going anywhere. No one was leaving this forgotten corner of hell except him. He was the master of their fate, and he was going to make them bleed. And then, the silence of the desert was shattered by the shrill, jarring ring of Matt's cell phone. It was Riza. Matt kept the gun trained on the Newmans as he answered the call. He listened. The cruel, sadistic smile slowly crept back onto his face, wider and more terrifying than before. Riza delivered the lie perfectly. She told him the Newmans had bolted. She told him Nick and Adam were cowards, currently speeding back to Genoa City, abandoning their search. Matt hung up the phone. A dark, euphoric joy washed over him. He threw his head back and laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound that chilled the blood. He looked at Sharon and Noah, his eyes dancing with malicious glee. He announced the news. The great Newman brothers had run away. They had surrendered. Matt decided, in a moment of supreme, arrogant confidence, that he did not need to hunt down Adam and Nick right now. He had all the time in the world. He would deal with the cowardly brothers later. Right now, he had a much more intimate, much more agonizing performance to direct. Matt stepped closer to his captives. The heat in the room was stifling, pressing down on them like a physical weight. He looked at Sharon. He looked at Noah. And then, he delivered a promise so horrific, so fundamentally evil, that it defied comprehension. Let me tell you, my heart was pounding out of my chest as he spoke these words. Matt began to taunt them. He didn't just threaten to shoot them. That would be too quick, too merciful. Instead, he painted a picture of their impending doom. He asserted, with a calm, chilling certainty, that one of them was going to have to watch the other die. He promised them a slow, agonizing descent into madness and despair. He told them he was going to chain them to the walls of this rotting building. He was going to bind them with heavy steel, leaving them completely immobilized in the suffocating desert heat. And then, he was going to leave them, no food, no water. Just the endless, agonizing tick of the clock as their bodies slowly shut down. He promised them that their final days on Earth would be spent watching the light fade from each other's eyes, listening to the desperate, dry gasp for air, knowing that they were completely, utterly helpless to save the person they loved most in the world. The sheer, sadistic cruelty of the threat hung in the air, paralyzing Sharon and Noah. Matt Clark had constructed a psychological torture chamber, and he was locking the door from the inside. He had stripped away all hope. He had isolated them in a landscape of pure terror. As the sun beats down on that abandoned gas station, and as a drug-fueled Nick Newman hurtles blindly down the highway with a terrified Adam at his side, the fate of the Newman family hangs entirely in the balance. The collision course is set. The explosive confrontation is inevitable. The only question that remains, as we stare into the terrifying abyss of Matt Clark's revenge, is this: can Nick and Adam possibly reach them in time to stop this horrific, slow-motion execution? Or are we about to witness the most devastating, soul-crushing tragedy in the entire history of Genoa City?